to start. So, dear colleagues, guests, and friends, first of all, it is a great pleasure to welcome all of you in the European Parliament for this important discussion. Indeed, we meet at a time when Europe is being tested once again, politically, socially, morally as well. War on our borders, the rise of populism, and the spread of disinformation remind us that our security and our shared values can never be taken for granted. In such times, we must return to the core principles of the European democracy, first of all, to pluralism, tolerance, and inclusion. And these are not just abstract ideals. They live in our institutions, our communities, and above all, in our educational environment. They should live there. Education is not only about transmitting knowledge. It is where citizens are formed, citizens who think critically, act responsibly, and can live together in diversity, united in diversity, you know. So that's one of the famous slogans of the European Union. That is why religious and worldview literacy is so central to our discussion today. In a pluralistic democracy, understanding different worldviews is not a luxury. It is a democratic necessity. It teaches us to engage across differences, and the most important, to respect human dignity of each person and to strengthen also European values together. The COREnet policy brief that we are going to discuss today offers a clear and practical message. It calls on us to integrate worldview literacy into all levels of education, from schools to universities, from teacher training to public administration. As a scholar of international and constitutional law, I know that democracy does not survive on legal texts only. It depends on a culture built through education, through open dialogue, and through respect for human rights. To preserve our liberal and pluralistic democracies, we need to have not only strong institutions, but also informed citizens. Citizens who can distinguish truth from lie, who understand that freedom and pluralism go hand in hand. Today's event is therefore not only about education policy. It is about resilience of our European democracy, about ensuring that future generations can think critically, speak respectfully, and participate fully, whatever their background or belief. Let us remember, Europe's greatest strength lies in its diversity. Education remains our most powerful tool to protect and renew that strength. Thank you very much for the COREnet network and for your research, for bringing this vital discussion into the heart of European democracy. And thank you all for being a part of this discussion about the future of a democratic and inclusive Europe. And on this note, I would like to pass the floor to Professor Milda Lišauskienė.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to introduce the occasion of this meeting and discussion. The following discussion, which derives from the activities of COST Action, Connecting Theory and Practical Issues of Migration and Religious Diversity, abbreviation COREnet, which aimed to produce, exchange, and build knowledge on cooperation across Europe on the topic of migration and religious diversity. For the last 4 years, since 2021, we have been working in this network, which includes more than 200 members coming from more than 36 countries, which was structured in 5 working groups. And today we will be presenting one of many results of this COST Action activities, the policy brief. I would like to encourage you to visit our website, corenetcost.eu, to find more of our results. And I would also like to express gratitude to European Parliament member, Professor Dainius Žalimas, for inviting us to present policy brief today here. And now I would like to invite my colleague and Vice Chair of Cost Action COREnet, Professor Annette Leis-Peters, to moderate this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Milda. And welcome also from my side. My name is Annette Leis-Peters and I'm based at VIT Specialized University in Norway and served as a Vice Chair for COREnet. And I don't waste much time, but I would like to give the floor directly to the main authors of the policy brief, Dr. Alexandra Djuric-Milovanovic and Dr. Ajbice Tonsun. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Annette. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra Djuric-Milovanovic. I work as a Principal Research Fellow at the Institute for Balkan Studies at the Serbian Academy of Science and Arts in Belgrade, Serbia. And I had the pleasure to be a member of this COREnet action in the past 4 years, and together with my colleague Ajbice Tonsun, to work on one of the deliverables of this project that is called the policy brief, as you can see on here and on the screen, I hope. The policy brief entitled Building Cohesion in Migration, Embracing Religious and Secular Perspectives in Formal and Informal Education. You can see on the screen how the policy brief looks like, and as mentioned, it is available on our website in integral version. I would briefly present some of the parts of the policy brief that are relevant to understand the context and why this policy brief today. We are, of course, witnessing, as Professor Žalimas already mentioned, the increased diversity, which also reflects in the European classrooms. And in the past years, affected by migration, the situation in schools and outside of schools has dramatically changed. Migration and also globalization have reshaped the cultural and religious landscape of our societies. Education, as we know, stands at the center of this transformation because the way we teach and the way we learn together determines also how cohesive our societies will be. Yet we also witness that religion, including worldviews, are often avoided in educational settings, seen as a private or even controversial. Therefore, the silence gap that we have identified between the realities of diverse classrooms and the competencies we are promoting through this policy brief, actually, how can we address this gap? We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, the need to bridge religious and secular perspectives is something that this policy brief is addressing. Worldview literacy is the concept that we are proposing in this policy brief that actually bridges the two views that we have been identifying as a profound need. It means actually that worldview literacy is ability to understand, reflect upon, and engage with different religious and secular perspectives, one's own and those of the others. This is not a religious instruction. It is about a concept that nurtures empathy, curiosity, critical thinking as competencies that our democratic societies depend on. We have been working closely and analyzing already existing frameworks that are recognized by the Council of Europe, by UNESCO, especially UNESCO's guidelines on intercultural education, trying to understand where actually we could contribute with the concept that we are proposing and what are the challenges that we have been identifying. Together, they remind us that understanding worldviews is not an optional topic, but it is a foundation of our societies that we live in. Can you please? Transfer the next slide. Thank you. We have identified that religious and secular worldviews are definitely absent from from most educational settings or school curricula. We have been addressing some of these challenges and trying to propose the way forward, especially knowing that in many countries, we know that religious education has been part of formal education. However, very often we are facing the situation where religious education is taught through the monoconfessional lenses without really recognizing the need of not only teaching about different religious perspectives, the different religions that exist in one country, but also both incorporating secular views, because we cannot have the perspective that everybody shares religious perspective. We live in both religious and secular societies, and we need to have equal respect to those who share religious beliefs and those who have secular views. Therefore, we are trying not to narrow our view on this, and the concept that we are actually proposing is embedding and is holistic enough to be able to embrace both views. And this is the only thing where you can avoid the gap of having one-sided approach. And this one-sided approach is one of the challenges that we are witnessing in our societies. Can you please go to the next slide? So once again, I think I have already mentioned that the need of integrating worldview literacy. Of course, it calls for cross-sector collaboration. Worldview literacy cannot be introduced without collaboration with different agencies, governments, education, media. Also, faith-based actors and religious institutions have their role in promoting worldview literacy, because it, as I mentioned, it embraces both sides, a religious and secular one. For us, it is important to understand, to engage with and reflect with people who have diverse beliefs, but also non-beliefs. And our ability and our competence and our knowledge to be able to understand this actually would come from the concept that we are proposing, which is holistic enough, as I mentioned, to embrace both sides. You can go to the next slide. We have been working in analyzing some of the activities that COREnet project has been actually developing, and through 4 years of our work, we have been working and exchanging knowledge with practitioners and scholars, trying to identify what are actually several insights that emerged, needs and gaps that we have identified, and how actually we can contribute with concrete proposals, concrete recommendations that my colleague will speak about a bit later. So we have an interdisciplinary community of scholars and which have been engaged through different workshops, webinars, stakeholder dialogue. So the insights that we are proposing in these policy briefs really comes to what is the most important in any policy brief: evidence-based policy. We cannot create policies that are detached from reality, that are speaking about challenges and problems of our society that are not related to what is happening on the ground, on the grassroots level. And through different activities that we have been working on, we have actually grasped some of these challenges from first-hand experience, working through different methodologies and discussing what actually are the problems that we are facing when it comes to inclusive education, and what is actually disrupting the cohesion in the classrooms, in other educational environments. We have been actually advocating through this policy brief the educators training, that the teacher training is essential, and the educators need both knowledge and confidence to engage with diversity constructively, that curricula and materials must reflect multiple perspectives, including migrant and minority experiences, that pedagogy should integrate worldview literacy across subjects and not limited to religious education, that school environments should be inclusive, and that policy frameworks should allow local adaptation with promoting shared democratic goals. So these are some of the insights that also that were brought through several activities that we have conducted, and that actually led us to create a number of recommendations that we hope that they will find applicability in the different settings, different future-oriented policy changes. And I would like now to ask my colleague Ajbice to speak about the challenges and present these recommendations that we have been identifying. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. I am Ajbice Tosun. I'm based at Eskişehir Osman Gazi University, Turkey. I am working on intercultural and worldview education for a while, with especially migrant and refugee children in the Turkish public school system. Thank you so much for this great introductory part of our policy brief. I would love to bring briefly about our recommendations in this policy brief. Well, when we, can we just change the slide, please? Thank you. Yes, when we turn to recommendations, one of the most important aspects is that they don't concern a single actor. Instead, they call a multi-stakeholder and participatory approach. Education, migration, and diversity are not the issues that can be solved by schools or governments alone. Should I just, okay, sorry. Oh, okay. How is it now? Good, thank you. So it can be solved by schools or governments alone. Okay. They require dialogue, collaboration, and co-responsibility across different sectors of the society. First, there's a clear role for governments. They need to integrate worldview literacy. This is the core and heart of our recommendation, into national educational standards, into professional training, not only in education, but also in welfare, health services, community development agendas. Governments also need to actively recognize and engage minority worldview groups in policy consultations. Too often, these groups are left outside of decision-making processes, which creates mistrust or sometimes missed opportunities. Funding is also key. States should dedicate resources to comprehensive and mandatory qualification programs that prepare teachers and educators of all levels to work with worldview diversity. Finally, governments must improve their data collection. Detailed data on migration learners' experiences, including their sense of belonging, identity, and participation, is crucial to design responsive policies. Second, let us look at the role of the schools, universities, and informal educational spaces. Institutions need to audit and revise curricula so that migrant and minority religious identities are represented accurately and positively, not in stereotypical ways. Teachers, trainers, and youth workers should have access to continuous professional development focused on inclusive pedagogy, dialogue, and worldview literacy. Schools also should create truly inclusive physical and symbolic environments where classroom materials, displays, and library collections genuinely mirror the diversity of their students. At the same time, they need to foster ongoing dialogue with both religious and non-religious communities, ensuring that every learner feels seen and supported. This can take many practical forms like holiday arrangements, accessible reflection or prayer spaces or prayer rooms, shared areas that welcome all students regardless of their belief or background. Third, religious and worldview organizations also have really significant role in this worldview literacy and education. They can partner with schools, workspaces, and local communities to deliver workshops, resources, or community dialogues on worldview literacy. They should also engage in policy discussions at local, national, international levels, advocating for inclusion and intercultural understanding. Additionally, these organizations can run awareness campaigns, cultural events, and storytelling initiatives that highlight the positive contributions of diverse societies. And they can initiate community-based projects such as mentoring programs, after-school activities, and intercultural activities that bring people together of different ages and different backgrounds. Fourth, media and cultural institutions are also essential. Journalists and editors should commit responsible reporting on migrants, minorities, and different worldview groups, helping to counter polarization rather than fuel it. Museums, libraries, cultural or community centers can play a role too by hosting exhibitions, performances, and dialogues that showcase diverse heritage. At the same time, training for media professionals in worldview literacy is critical to ensuring balance and representation and reducing misinformation. Finally, let me stress that meaningful change requires implementation strategies. We cannot remain at the level of just ideals. Policies must be co-designed with those most affected by them. This means working with migrant learners, minority representatives, local communities, and different worldview groups. We also need stronger stakeholder collaboration. Ministries of education, schools, municipalities, local media, religious and worldview organizations, civil society must work together. This collaboration can take shape through permanent advisory groups where representatives of migrant and worldview minorities are given a real voice. And importantly, we need robust monitoring and evaluation mechanism conducted not only at national level, but also with local communities, schools, and informal educational spaces. Without monitoring, policies remain good intentions without measurable outcomes. In conclusion, the challenges are clear: limited curriculum space, insufficient teacher preparation, and fragmented policy responses. But these challenges should not be seen as obstacles only. They also provide us with an opportunity to rethink education in ways that genuinely prepare societies for diversity. Our recommendations, from integrating worldview literacy to strengthening teacher training, mainstreaming pluralism, enhancing European and international coordination, and bridging academia and policy, are not abstract ideals. They are practical steps that can help education system become more inclusive, resilient, and future-oriented. I would like to close by underlining that these proposals are not the end of this journey, but a starting point for future collaborations. So if we can move forward together, if we can transform this challenge into opportunities, we may contribute building more cohesive and inclusive school spaces, both formal and informal settings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra and Aybice. And now we have the great chance to discuss this policy brief together with experts from the field of policy, from the field of practice, and from the field of research. And before we enter the discussion, I would like to give the panelists the chance to shortly present themselves. We have already met our host, Member of Parliament, Professor Dr. Dainius Žalimas, Dr. Juric Milovanovic, and Dr. Thompson, but we have much more panelists, and I would like to start with Michelle and ask everybody to give a short presentation.
Yes, hello to you all. I am a teacher educator from the Faculty of Education, the University of Malta, and my role in the faculty is to coordinate mentoring for our student teachers when they go to do their field placement in schools. So I train teachers to become mentors. I also work a lot in schools on their further learning, and I try to build communities of practice in schools where teachers can be empowered to transform their practices and enhance their teaching. Marginally, I also touch a bit on migration, because this is a new phenomenon for Maltese schools, and this is something that a lot of teachers are concerned about. So when I go to do training, we also do a lot of workshops on how to build this sense of belonging to students coming from diverse backgrounds. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Annika?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Arnika Kuusisto. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Educational Sciences at the University of Helsinki. So I'm supervising research and teaching future teachers in Finland. And I have done research on religion and education approximately 25 years now. Especially I've been looking at religious minority socialization, diversity of religions and worldviews in schools, and also prevention of radicalization, which I think here is very topical, also related to the subject we are discussing today. Then we have also looked at at present we have a research project looking at the place of religion in Swedish teacher education. So, and I think also these are matters of national and European security, like was mentioned before. I think it's important to connect the societal cohesion to that.
Thank you.
Hello, today I'm Siniša Zrinščak. I'm professor of sociology at the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Law. So I teachers, I'm researchers. I'm doing mainly research in the field of religion, but connected with different, other topics, mainly gender, migration, and some other. Besides teaching future lawyers, about the general knowledge of society, which I think is very much important, not just going to the subject. I also teach future social workers and public administrators in the field of sociology. And what is really I found very important for them, unfortunately, it's only optional subject. It's a subject about religion and social issue. And the main core of this subject is to learn about others, either majority and minority religion and their work in the social field.
Thank you. And we go to the other side. Please, Heather.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Roy, and I'm Secretary General of Eurodiaconia. Eurodiaconia is a European network of 62 organisations that have a foundation in the Christian faith and provide social and health care services and social inclusion work on a not-for-profit basis. We're based here in Brussels, but have members in 32 countries around Europe, so with different experiences of interreligious dialogue or of the role of religion in the country, and indeed the position of organisations with a Christian identity within the country. So I look forward to contributing later on.
Thank you. And Juan Carlos, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Juan Carlos Martin. I'm full professor of applied economics in the Canary Islands in Spain. As you probably know, the Canary Islands is having, one of the most important refugee crises in the last 10 years with the Cayucos came into the coast of the Canary Islands, and has been a great privilege to be part of the COREnet, because not the same situation as my colleagues speaking before me. I've been involved in this area only for 4 years, making research on these issues of migration, national identity, the intersection now of religious groups, tolerance, and all that. And I think it's very important. And as Anissa says, it's about to be tolerant. I think it's just to put your shoes on other shoes places and try to understand much better what others do. And I'm very happy to contribute to this panel today.
Thank you very much, all of you. As you can see, this is a a very diverse panel with different experiences, expertises, and disciplines, but also contexts represented. And this is also the background for the first question that I want to give to the panelists. Alexandra introduced us and told us that this policy brief is answering to challenges. And I want to ask you, what are the most important challenges from your background, your work, your context that come in mind when you think of the topic and the aim of this policy brief? Maybe we start from the practice field.
Thank you very much. I wrote down two things when I was thinking about this question earlier on, and maybe I changed my mind, but one of the biggest issues we have is bias. It is the lack of equality between whether it be ethnicity, whether it be gender, whether it be identities or religion. And our host mentioned it earlier on, this is a question of democratic principles as well. And I think our colleague from Finland spoke on it as well, as it being the challenge also of extremism. And that comes from a number of different places. So when I think about what's the biggest challenge we face, I think it's the fragmentation of our societies that is represented by extremism, by bias, by lack of equality, and lack of inclusion or welcome or hospitality as a continent as well. And that brings me to the more practical side, because our members work a lot with migrants, and there is sometimes, if I may challenge slightly, the assumption that this is always a question about migration and migrants, because there are many people who live in our societies who are not migrants, but who face the challenges of exclusion because of their religious identity or other aspects. But I know here we focus on this particular perspectives, and where misunderstandings, if I use a light word, between those of different religions in the classroom, in the playground, and in the social actions, the local community centre, are not as a result of their status as migrants, but simply because of our inability at times to understand each other. So whereas I see the focus in this project in migration, the other challenge is sometimes to take this question out of the migration box, because by having it in the migration box, it gives it a certain perspective, or there's certain people who get interested in it who are not interested in the cohesion of society, but in the fragmentation of society, and use migration as a way in to do that.
Thank you. Anybody who want to, yes, finish up, please.
Well, you just inspired me with this box, because what I see two challenges, and the one from my own perspective, from my own country, and I think it is shared with many other countries, particularly with this populist and right-wing, political movement, is to see migration as a disaster. It is seen as a natural disaster that will come and will end. Now we have some, problem, but we will soon, solve the problem. So the migration is not seen as a long-lasting process, which is, a part of our society and will never stop. And our society are so profoundly changed. So, we put it in the box. I see, I explained it as a natural disaster. So natural disaster comes, we will deal with it and it will end, which is not true. And if we are talking about migration like that, we are not talking about nothing, and we will not solve nothing. So this is the first, I think, the biggest challenge. Another challenge is talking about religion, which I think maybe should be a little bit rephrased in this, how you explain it. Because you said that religion is usually seen as a private fact or through the secular lenses. But still there are some society in which religion is really a public fact, is a public actor, is very influential actor, is an actor which set the agenda, which force people, I think, to look only through themselves and from their own perspective, not to enlarge this perspective. So I think, such role of religion in some society, and you know, there are many such societies in which, you know, religion is, the position of the churches are very strong and they're very publicly oriented. They then don't talk about migration, or they talk only in negative terms about migration. Is something we should take into account as the challenges.
Thank you. I saw Michelle, yes?
Yes, definitely this right-wing way of doing politics is not helping, and it is a feeling that we also share in Malta, that most of our politicians, in order to be popular, try to use the migrant issue as an issue, when in fact it can be a very good opportunity for us all to enrich our society. In Malta, we are dealing with this very significant influx of migrants in a very short time. In 10 years or so, we had around 200,000 or 250,000 of migrants entering our country in a population which is less than 500,000. So it's changed very quickly, and we are still trying to deal with it. And the feeling ranges from something where I can't understand and I can't accept because I can't understand, up to it's a whole spectrum. It goes to hatred. And I want to share with you a very brief story of how this can manifest itself in my society. I live in a very quiet community, and there are some Pakistani people living in an apartment opposite my house. And as neighbors, this was something new, because the street was made up until a few years ago from all Maltese people. And we were saying, oh, okay, I mean, they seem to be nice. They seem to be integrating quite well. We can live with that. And last Sunday, there was an incident where one of these migrant residents parked his car in front of a garage of my neighbors. And the neighbor was very angry about it, and an argument erupted. And there were a lot of words which showed how we can't yet deal with this diversity. Like, you have to go back to your country, and what did you expect? That you come to Malta and you keep doing things like you do in your country? So, you know, there is this strong sense of not being able to accept diversity. And from these brief moments, you realize that we're not quite there yet, because when there is this amount of bias and maybe hatred, it means that we need to still do a lot of work in schools. It's also because of our history, because we have been colonized for a very long time, and now that we're independent, we're trying to change the pattern, and we're trying to be the superior ones. And since we found this opportunity to have people that we can rule around, and we think that we can, you know, we can be superior to them. But because this is a bit of a digression, in terms of schools and teachers, I think that one of the biggest challenges is language, and this is because we are a bilingual country. We have 2 official languages, so people who come to Malta and they are not conversant in English or Maltese need to learn 2 languages simultaneously in order to access education. And this can be very problematic, especially if they are not so very young, because those who are integrated at kindergarten level, they acquire language very, very easily. But if you are like 10 years, 11 years old, and you know your native tongue, but you also have to learn another 2 languages, it becomes a bit more difficult. And it's also because usually people from migrant communities are considered as underachievers, because some of them still live in poverty. And this stratifies them into a category where they are considered as disadvantaged. This does not help the bias, and obviously does not help them to achieve as well as other students. So those are two big challenges, I think, that as educators we really need to address.
Thank you. And I saw Annika's hand, and then one comes and.
Yes, thank you very much. Migration, of course, is one of the aspects influencing this, but in many ways it is only one aspect when we look at segregation and fragmentation of the societies. First of all, the polarizing and hardening of values and ideologies is a very important factor, and also the increasing child poverty, like you also mentioned, the socioeconomic differences also influence here. But I think, and all these are contributing to the multi-crisis the situation that the children and youth are now growing up within. And we have a lot of children and young people's lack of well-being, and this sense of meaning is somehow lessening all the time, and the polarization and hardening of values and ideologies that also increase the bullying and ostracism, and that kind of matters are really making it difficult for many children and young people. But also the individualization as an educational value influences this when we look at the children and young people growing up in any kind of worldview or religious background or secular families, because many children and young people are left increasingly on their own when constructing their worldviews. And according to many studies, the children and youth would actually like to have support for their worldview construction from schools, because schools can be somehow more neutral than homes or religious organizations when we look at the different perspectives and dialogue. So school can function as a platform for discussions and mutual exchange, and that way also support the empathy and mutual understanding in the societal cohesion.
Thank you. And I saw Juan Carlos, and will then give the word to the policy.
Yeah, let me share with you, some a personal anecdote, and I want to change the focus from challenges, which for me are not new at all, to best solutions and good practices. I was at that time in 1999, 26 years ago, at my early stage of my career. I was in Berkeley, staying for 1 year as a visiting scholar. And at that time, I was a migrant in the United States. And we were living in Albany, which is a small village, very near Berkeley. And my oldest daughter was in the elementary school for the first time in a foreign country as a migrant also. And in the school, there were 52 nationalities. And we received a newsletter from the school, let's say like every week or every 2 other weeks, explaining to us different situations regarding the Ramadan, Hanukkah, Christmas, Yom Kippur. But this was not very striking to me because, well, I was quite familiar with religions, different religions in the world. But at that time, what it was really striking to me is that for the first time, I received a newsletter telling us as parents, you have to explain your children that there are different types of families, right? Remember, 1999, saying so a family can have 2 dads, 2 moms. Being from Spain, I can tell you that that was quite striking. But at the same time, it was really, an amazing thing just to be flexible and being tolerant. And every month, I think it was the last month, I'm sure you know my wife, remember that much better than me. But I think it was on the last Fridays of every month, we have like a potluck party. Yeah? And to my surprise, you know, our food was the first to be eaten. The potatoes, the Canadian potatoes, the wrinkled potatoes, the papas arrugadas. So I think we have, again, you know, as we have Dr. Žalimas here with us, we really need just to focus on this, you know, best practices. And I think the best practice is always just to love others. You know, as Martin Luther King, I'm going to end this part of my presentation. It doesn't depend on which country you are from, which tribe you are from. You have to remember that we are all in the same boat. This is Martin Luther King's words.
Thank you. Professor Žalimas, would you also add some challenges?
Thank you very much. You know, it's very difficult to add something qualitatively new after hearing our esteemed speakers. I would maybe prefer only to summarize in the following words that this policy brief, as in general, its idea to educate on worldview literacy and religious literacy, including, for me, it's one of the most important challenges which this policy brief respond to is towards democratic backsliding. And I think they contain everything what has been already mentioned, both the fragmentation, both rising of political populism and the related, you know, because migration as such, it is usually used by right-wing extreme political forces as a card to come into power. And of course, this kind of policy briefs, it responds to these challenges by teaching us the opposite thing, that migration is not a threat, difference is not a threat, but it's rather opportunity, or it's something that enrich our societies and cultures. And that is, I think, the most important, in particular, to responding to those populistic forces. And in responding to disinformation, we all speak in the European Parliament usually about such threats, how to fight disinformation. So let's not forget that usually all those stereotypes about or prejudices against different religions, they are based on stereotypes, and can call it disinformation. And also, it's to a certain extent, it's also the response to not friendly, let's say, external forces, because usually external forces such as Russia or other authoritarian regimes, they also sometimes not only, how to say, in spirit, but also by funds supporting right-wing movements in a number of countries. So I think that is one of the biggest contribution that policy brief can make, that is namely to fight against democratic backsliding.
Thank you. And you point already to this potential. And now I want to ask Alexandra and Ivic, because you decided to put worldview literacy and literacy also as maybe something that is has the power against this backsliding into the center of this policy brief. So if you could say some more words, why do you think this is an innovative concept that we could use for the future?
First of all, I think everybody more or less mentioned that one of the issues we are dealing with is lack of knowledge about the other, lack of knowledge about generally addressing religious and any kind of diversity, especially in the classroom. and the lack of awareness, because we are very much facing, as we just heard, misinformation, lack of information, and this is the place, the birthplace of how the prejudices actually arise and how they are created. Very often we know about, I would say, traditional religious groups. We are very, very less informed about minority religious communities. So in any case, there is a lack of dialogue in any sense, especially interreligious dialogue, but also intercultural dialogue. And actually, one of the reasons why this is the case is because we don't have the knowledge, and we don't have teachers who are trained or educators who are trained to deal with the diversity in the classroom in a way that would, equally treat all aspects of this diversity. So the concept that we are proposing, which is worldview literacy, is not about teaching doctrines, but about developing actually dialogical skills that also include empathy, reflection, curiosity about the other. And I would say that this is the challenge that we are addressing through this concept, and that we are aiming to somehow cover with this concept, which is wide enough that embraces both religious and secular perspectives, as we already mentioned. But I think the core problem of our society is that we have heard about the fragmentation and about the polarized views and about the rise of right-wing populism is actually the lack of need to expand the knowledge about diversity. And this knowledge is, of course, the first place where the knowledge about diversity and about the actually complexities of our societies nowadays is in educational environments, both formal and informal. So one of the, I would say, calls of this policy brief is actually to invest more in capacity building, in skills, in knowledge of those who are transmitting the knowledge to young generations, both teachers or educators in different levels, in different contexts, both in formal and informal educational settings.
Yes, thank you. And I just, now I'm a bit strict, that we can hear as many as possible, if we can be, think of all being short, but I will too.
Yes, taking from your point about the educational spaces, it is so obvious that the curricula need directly deal with the everyday problems, actually, because it needs to somehow connect with the youth of today. And the youth, they are asking about justice, equality, climate crisis, about who they are, where they are coming from. If the education doesn't engage these questions, it risks becoming detached from young people's life. So, and one powerful way to bridge this is a worldview literacy, actually. And we can make this through formal educational settings, through, I don't know, religious education, citizenship education, values education, through narratives, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. How does worldview literacy resonate with welfare and healthcare work?
I mean, absolutely. One of the biggest challenges I think we have going forward when it comes to, for example, long-term care is ensuring that those who work in long-term care have a worldview literacy, because of the different demographics we will have in Europe, the different needs that people will have in terms of their religious observance or their cultural observance in our care societies. So I think there's huge issues there, and our sector needs to learn from that. I would also encourage us, again, to see it beyond only being about migrants, but being about all types of differences that we see, as in we can have Muslim people living in our community who are not migrants and who still face many challenges because of that. That being said, I would also come back to what my colleague from Spain said about this. Where do we have these interactions? So we have them, as you've mentioned, in the formal education setting. For me, I always refer to non-formal and informal education. It's a whole nother discussion, I'm sure. But The non-formal education is basically what's happening in youth organisations, what's happening in civil society organisations, and to some degree in the activities that organisations in the world that I work in are providing, usually at a community level, local community level, most impactful. But would I also like to say, because we have somebody here from the European Parliament, that these are the areas that are being drastically underfunded by national governments, where there is no investment in youth work or community-based work, let alone education in schools, which I'm sure that there are many things to say. So I think as the EU looks at its future budget, investment in people to have that worldview literacy would be really, really important. And the last thing, because I know you want us to be quick, is that very practically, one of our Finnish members has been launching a campaign, and I'm not going to quote from it directly because it's in Finnish, but essentially they have asked the question, when did it become radical to be on each other's side? When did it become radical for us to try and understand the other? Because today it is radical. And that's a campaign that they're running at the moment.
There's no coincidence that Annika from Finland is also.
Yes, I think that is critically important what you are raising, and I think that's why, because we do have teacher education in all countries, so I think this is a critical perspective that needs to be embedded in both teacher education and of course care education, all the other sectors as well. And I think it's also because worldview literacy is a critical citizenship skill also for the future. And it does bring understanding for the lived religions and other worldviews, because like Muslim is not, like not all Muslims are the same, not all Adventist families are the same, but the super diversity here where the migration is one of the layers only. But I think all of this is actually building to the identity safe spaces, and this can be informal, formal, non-formal context, but so that every child and youth could come there and their core need for being seen and heard would be met.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, I really support the idea of worldwide literacy. I think it's really important, but I would further underline what you said in brief and Alexandra explained. It's that the knowledge is not neutral. This literacy should be socially engaged, because it's not like a fact. It's something more which should come with empathy, with compassion, with openness, because I know and we know from our own experiences that being educated by something doesn't mean that you support it and that you like that and that you will engage with them. So I think really this socially embeddedness, in the opening, diversity of this knowledge is very important. This is stressed, but I would further stress.
Yes, Juan Carlos.
Yeah. Okay. When do we become radical? I think we become radical when we do not respect others, right? So, and I will say, that if you cannot love somebody, at least try to respect him or her. And I think at least half part of the problems are mainly resolved. But it's a question of practice. Just try to make others' lives better. Try to love them as much as you can. And if you cannot love them, then respect them. And that's it.
Yes, Milda. Yes, Milda, please.
Yeah, I think I will also join a bit this discussion. I think to summarize what has been said also from Juan Carlos, I think it's a nice time to remember this idea of deep equality and the concept of deep equality coined by sociologist Laurie Beeman from Canada, which speaks that we start understanding and getting to know another person on a very simple daily interactions, and when we meet and we understand that the other person also has the family, that he or she has their own life and their own worries and troubles, that they're going through very similar experiences like us. And this is of course something that would very much contribute to this worldview literacy idea, which we understand that comes like some kind of suggestion from us now. But at the same time, it is very true, and I would support very much what Sinisha was saying, that only through this experience and through going out from the classrooms, from these settings, and meeting these actual people and getting to understand them as deeply equal to you, is the key aim and of this whole idea.
Yeah, thank you. And because time is running, I think we give each other 5 more minutes, because we started out a little bit late as well. But starting from what you said, Milda, this meeting people, and I think here we're very lucky to have Heather among us, representing a lot of people working with people and the informal and non-formal educational settings. Before maybe I give the word back to you, we have a lot of recommendations in this policy briefs also pointing to different actors, and you, Heather, were pointing in your last comment to the governments and the funding policies. So may I just go back to politics and ask Professor Žalimas to comment a little bit on what possibilities do you see to support also by funding policies the maybe worldview literacy that is prepared in these kind of organizations?
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Just I'm thinking what to say, because our European Parliament, unfortunately, it adopts only or is taking part. It's more precisely to say in adopting only the European Union's budget, which is not really big. It's around 1% of GDP of member states, if I am correct, and of course, it as such, it does not include directly financing educational programs in member states. Usually, it is perceived as the discretion or national policies of member states. European Union here, unfortunately, can play only limited role, but as far as it touch the main fundamental values of the European Union, among which, of course, tolerance, diversity, equality, of course, are the key values. So here, of course, the European Union encourages, and member states as well, but all the time we, through various committees working here, we are trying to push the European Union also to make emphasis on what we call equality and tolerance. Maybe not specifically yet mentioning worldview literacy, but from my own perspective, of course, worldview literacy is one of the most important issues to address, since it really connects what we talk on theoretical level about the European Union or our common constitutional values. It connects them with the reality on the ground. And what is the more important, of course, I understand that here indeed the European Union has very limited competence to interfere, but when talking about curricula in schools and universities, at least in some countries, like Lithuania, for example. This curricula, for me, seems to be one-sided or even biased, because here the schools and universities usually avoid, maybe in one of the framework of one courses or never, like on civic education, but I'm not pretty sure about that. But usually they talk only about the prevailing religion in the country, which is also the teaching on the religion. It is even our commitment under the treaty with the Holy See. But unfortunately, diversity and tolerance, and especially understanding, they are not appropriately addressed. And for me, worldview literacy to be included in both curricula, it would help to make education, especially in schools, what is the most important, let's say, more balanced, or more also addressing the European Union values, because, you know, it's adjustment only to monolithic, let's say, society. It is not appropriate anymore. Even such countries like Lithuania, it's becoming more and more multicultural or multi-religious, for example.
It is that we are, do we have any digital participants? We have, and can we open for questions for them as well? Because we would now have the chance to open our discussion for contributions in addition to the plenary discussions. But while I'm opening now the discussion, I would like to ask each of the panelists to prepare one sentence to conclude with what would be the most important recommendation to make this core of the policy brief become reality in Europe and in all our different contexts. So I will give each of you one sentence in the end, but before that, I want to open our discussion, because we have indicated an open discussion in this next 20 minutes. Is there anybody from the persons present in the room or digitally? I do not have access to the digital. Alessandro, yes, no? Davide? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your contribution and your presentation. I was thinking about like this general reflection about how you stress the idea that education can serve as a tool for building connection between democratic resilience and meaningful inclusion. And I liked a lot this, let's say, this definition of meaningful. So I'm trying to understand a bit more, what does it mean, like, to have a meaningful inclusion? And my main question is like for the authors of the policy brief mainly. So how we can address internal differences within the religious group, within the minority groups, because of course also religious groups are not closed boxes in which they are all homogeneous. And we can think, of course, about gender and other intersection, you mentioned it, but also political positioning is not homogeneous within minority groups. And also, especially, I think age should be like addressed as a vector of differences if we think about second generation, the so-called third generation. So when we reflect about this is definitely a topic that is relevant for educators and for teachers. Since the policy brief aimed to engage minority religious group and trying to make them actors, internal actors within the policy-making process, how we can find some mechanism in order to go beyond some simplistic definition of minority groups and some like this perception that religious group are boxes and you can address one leader of the group and pretend that this is like enough for having a representation of the religious group or other minorities. Thank you.
Thank you. And this goes to Alexandra and Albice.
I can go first. Regarding meaningful inclusion, I think this was referring to the concept of, not declarative inclusion, but really having meaningful inclusion, meaning that it is not what maybe some laws are prescribing, but is a reality that is existing. This means meaningful inclusion, at least from my perspective. It means that it is really taking place, and that people of very different backgrounds are equally treated and included in dialogue, in conversation, in discussion, visible, seen, and not neglected. When it comes to the internal aspect of religious, especially religious minority groups, I think one of the key points is that we need to understand that even within one tradition, we definitely have a need for intra-religious dialogue. I think this is something that is quite often missing, that especially, for example, I come from Serbia. We are lacking intra-Christian dialogue, for example, in Serbia. We are not speaking about some small minority groups, but we are missing fundamental dialogue very often between so-called traditional Christian communities, not to mention Christian minority groups. They are not even at the table. So, allowing and not only creating artificial settings where people would be invited by, religious leader invited to sit at the table and have this meeting, and this is so-called intra or inter-religious dialogue, and this is it as a representative, as you rightly say. I think we need to go beyond that kind of representation of especially minority religious groups, and that through engagement with not only one representative, but as a community as a whole, very often we have in our programs, especially at the university level, visits to different religious communities, to different religious sites. I think, interaction between students and community members at a specific location of that respective community, seeing how their place of worship looks like, being engaged, maybe participating or observing religious service, sharing a common meal together. I think this is the way how we can translate this kind of culture of encounter into something very practical, where we do not engage with one specific, religious leader representing that community, but we do engage with the community as a whole. So creating these spaces, engaging, and even, we as academics, I think, writing about religious minorities, especially in also non-academic way, trying to speak in the public, I would say, in media, or writing about them in more scientific, popular way, can also open the doors and, make these identities and traditions closer to young generations and to wider public. So there are many ways how you can create these settings where culture of encounter happens in a not artificial way, but in a more natural, dialogical way, where people feel safe to ask questions and to learn about each other.
If I may add something, I may say that enhancing this worldview literacy into intra-religious diversity would perfectly work. And if we look at the details of this worldview education, we can also see that we are not only talking about worldview of specific groups, but worldview of individual believers, not only in religious setting, but non-religious settings as well. So enhancing worldview literacy into each part of these small groups and subgroups would work, I guess.
Thank you. So I think we could start maybe with our round and collecting. If there is not no digital question, what would be the most important policy recommendation to make happen what is described in this policy brief? Michelle, now I start again from your side.
Yes, it's very difficult to just use one sentence, because there needs to be different stakeholders from the political level to policymakers, and those in charge of higher education, because when it comes to training of teachers, it needs to span, you know, their whole career trajectory from initial teacher education and CPD. But I would focus on teachers. Teachers can be very powerful in classrooms, and if they are able to create these physical and symbolic spaces of inclusion, where people coming from diverse backgrounds are not just represented, but feel that they belong. And without this emphasis on their point of diversion, when we try to emphasize that student needs to be treated differently because he's a migrant, or because his religion is different, or because his language is different, or because he's an underachiever, that is going to do a lot of injustice to the student itself and to the student population. So we need to create this safe space of belonging. And in terms of this worldview literacy, I think one of the strengths is that the approach promotes a lot of discursive practices in the classroom, something that goes beyond the subject matter itself. When you teach your students to critically engage and to reflect critically, then they can do it beyond the school. They can do it when they are watching their TikTok videos, when they are listening to some politician doing a speech, when they are in the playground with their peers. And if we manage to train teachers to create these discursive spaces and pass them on to their students, I think that's going to leave a lot of impact.
Thank you. The key role of the teachers. I overlooked a comment from Dennis, and after that, I give the word to Annika.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all presenter, and then I am happy to participate in this panel. I have one question, Professor Žalimas. You also know this project really advised many new policy, and there is many good suggestions also. But how can the European Parliament or other European Union bodies, institutions ensure that the recommendations of these policy brief translate into concrete policy instruments or funding mechanism? This is my question. Thank you very much.
Can I?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. Yeah, indeed, it is the field when I feel myself a little bit restricted because of the restricted powers of the European Parliament. As I tried to explain before, the European Union has quite a limited competence to influence, I don't know, education curricula in member states. That is for natural limitations of the competence of the European Union, and this field still remains in wide discretion of member states. But if to speak in practical terms, first of all, European Union, the Commission, first of all, usually prepares various strategies on human rights actions. For example, soon we will have gender equality strategy for the next 5 years, if I am right, for LGBT. So the same can be done, I think, in this field and simply include into the strategy. Of course, it is not so binding. It is rather, let's say, soft law. But anyway, when measuring member states on what they have achieved in the field of the rule of law, I think this can be one of the factors to assess that is in ideal picture. And actually, the overview of the rule of law situation in member states, for me, still seems to be with, let's say, with a very small ambition. And the biggest ambition can be include the issues like worldview literacy, because I think it is really important, because if to leave these issues only to almost exclusive or absolute discretion of member states, then we naturally coming to such phenomena like, democracy backsliding in Hungary, in Slovak Republic, in Lithuania as well, where we have very strange combination. I think it is unique political coalition between socialists and extreme right populists. Maybe there are also some other countries with such kind of combination, but I don't know. So I think mostly through strategy and policy recommendations, and of course following the state of the rule of law in each country.
Annika, please.
Yes. First of all, I would like to add a small comment to the question that David posed about the diversity within. I think it's also important to remember that we have also many individuals who have several intersecting religious identities and families that have many religions. So I think we have to think about diversity as super diversity, as the diversifying diversities in all different levels. But I have tried to formulate one sentence, which is that worldview literacy can contribute towards societal resilience and sustainable well-being of children and youth, but only if it's not only taught, but also implemented and facilitated in all levels of policy and practice. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. we will note this sentence. Sinisha.
I have no sentence, but I have a problem with media, which, I'm old-fashioned guy who followed all this type of media, and I see that my students don't. And when I talk to them, I ask them, did you read about that, and so on? They didn't. So how to put this policy recommendation in the media, for the media through new social media, TikTok, whatever, where the knowledge and the prejudice and experiences are shared, and where young people take their position from that, and from them without any of our interference, not only as researchers, teachers, parents, policy brief makers, whatever. So I don't have a question. I don't have an answer, but I have a question, which I don't have an answer. Sorry.
Thank you for this disruption, this important disruption and point. So maybe, yes, we go to the other side. Heather?
Thank you. First of all, I think this whole concept of worldwide literacy, worldwide view literacy is really, really helpful. I think it's a good concept to have. If I were in your shoes as a research group, maybe I would sharpen some of the policy a little bit further to go further. I mean, if you have the time to do that, because I think there's actually places where this can go. I do think there's places in the next EU budget, the Erasmus programme, or what will become the Agora programme, being one of them. What was the citizenship and rights programme, and how that's going to be developed. But also at the moment, back in March, the European Commission launched the Action Plan on Basic Skills, which is a lot to do with digital skills and different types of literacy, but also includes citizenship education. And that is part of what has been built as the European education area, which is looking at having exactly what you've been talking about today, cooperation between educational providers, between the teacher trainers, between the teachers, sharing of resources. And I think that instead of sort of saying what's the best policy recommendation, and maybe wanting to say where you can take your policy recommendations, because that's also a bit of what we do. We also, a little bit, I was thinking, what's missing from this? And for me, it is the providers of community-led or social interactions. So whether it be the social workers who are working in partnership with schools or working in partnership with religious organizations, then I think they need to be addressed by this as well if you want to approach the non-formal settings as well as the formal settings. But that's just from my perspective as a practitioner, because this is really important in our social field as well, because we are seeing the impact of the fact this is not happening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, one sentence. You have the one sentence from my first intervention, the one of Martin Luther King's. But I'm gonna thinking aloud what Milda was saying about equality. You know, I remember one movie, A Time to Kill. I don't know if you have seen it or not, but at the end of the movie, the white lawyer went to a family's party of the black man who has killed this white man at the beginning of the film. So I think, you know, you have to mingle with others. You have to stay with others' families. You have to create a sensation of community, that you are sharing something with others, and in that way, you will think your imagination from the they to we, and this is the most important. That yeah, we are all the same, you know, as human beings, and that's it.
Thank you. So now our time comes to an end soon. I want to give the two main authors the chance to give their summarizing sentence from this session before we conclude shortly.
Yes, it is so hard to conclude in just one sentence or in even summarizing it. I think the one powerful way to bridge this gap with worldview literacy is narratives. Stories show how worldviews are actually lived, embodied, and transformed. And especially for migration, stories of migrants reveal how identities shift and evolve in new contexts. And these kind of stories make difference visible and human and relatable at the same time. So going back to worldview literacy and how we can sharpen it, maybe we can say that we have to invest teacher training, bring diversity, worldview literacy, and narratives into curricula, and expand collaborative projects like this. So we need to conduct much more projects like this, so we can first identify what is worldview literacy and how we can implement it both in curricula, in teacher training, in education for media, or somehow teach, like all of us, for ourselves as well, how we should read this social media, how we should read TikToks, and how we navigate our teachers and students into it. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if there is no additional comments, oh, sorry.
I already spoke so much.
No, sorry.
I have just one sentence.
Yes,
So I do hope that the worldview literacy concept that we are proposing in this policy brief will help us if implemented, and I sincerely hope that this policy brief will have its life and its path, will help us to understand what brings us together and not what sets us apart.
So thank you. That was really a very good final word for this session. And I think now it is only to Milda and myself to give some final comments.
Well, I just would like to thank everyone who came here and who worked, and especially Aibike and Alexandra for working on this policy brief. And I just can, say, following what Alexandra said, hopefully policy brief will have its own life now, and it will find its way into the agendas of people who are taking decision on the European Union level, and hear these our ideas and take the needed steps.
Yeah, thank you. And I want also to thank everybody who contributed, not at least that to our host, Professor Žalimas, to give us the space to discuss this at the very core of the European Union. And as you said, gave us the feeling that what we worked with is really central, as it is contributing to being unified in diversity. I also think that for me, the word of the discussion became boxes. Interestingly, brought into the discussion that we need to be aware of the boxes still, and a lot is about unboxing also our minds. And I was really fascinated that what was a key idea of our action, namely that it is about the collaboration between practice field and research that is bringing the new knowledge, that it also turned out in this panel discussion with very concrete suggestions how we can even more sharper formulate what we want to, if we want to reach out. So Heather, many thanks for your concrete suggestions making this happen, and also for seeing the formal education and its importance with the teachers and the central role in the classroom, as you put it, Michelle, together with all these informal settings, but also to name them more clearly. I think that is also a big learning. So thank you for this very insightful discussion contributions and for sharing the time with us. Yeah.